My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 48 years old, and according to my parents, I was homeless. At least, that's what they told everyone in town. They told neighbors, they told relatives, they told people at church, they even told complete strangers. Poor Sarah lost everything. She's practically living out of her car. She's struggling. She just can't get her life together. The crazy part? None of it was true. Not one word. But I stayed quiet because sometimes the truth becomes a lot more powerful when people spend months believing a lie. And trust me, the day my parents saw my name on those property records, the look on their faces was worth every second. Before I tell you what happened, take a second to like and subscribe if you enjoy emotional family stories filled with betrayal, secrets, and satisfying karma. Now, let's get into it. 3 years ago, my marriage ended. 21 years. Gone. Just like that. No affair, no huge scandal, just two people who slowly became strangers. The divorce wasn't ugly, but it was expensive. I lost the house, half my retirement, most of my savings, and almost every piece of furniture I'd spent years collecting. I remember standing in the driveway with my last box, watching another woman move into the home where I'd raised my kids. That feeling, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. The hardest part wasn't losing the house, it was losing the life I thought I'd built. For months afterward, I felt like I was walking in a fog. Every morning I woke up wondering what came next, and every night I went to bed feeling like I'd failed. Not as a wife, not as a mother, as a person. So I did what a lot of people do when life falls apart. I started over, quietly, without making announcements, without posting inspirational quotes online, without asking anyone for sympathy. I rented a small extended stay suite outside Columbus. Nothing fancy, one bedroom, tiny kitchen, old carpet, but it was mine, and after everything I'd been through, that felt like a blessing. My parents saw things differently. To them, the apartment was proof I was a failure. My younger brother, Ryan, had always been the golden child. Ryan could do no wrong. Didn't matter that he'd gone through 3 bankruptcies, didn't matter that mom and dad had bailed him out more times than anyone could count. Ryan was still the success story, and I was the disappointment. One Sunday after church, I found out exactly how bad things had become. A woman named Linda approached me in the grocery store. She looked nervous, almost guilty. Then she said, "Sarah, honey, if you need anything, just ask." I smiled politely. "Need what?" She hesitated, then said, "Your mother told everyone you're sleeping in your SUV." I froze. "What?" Linda's face turned bright red. She realized immediately she'd said too much, but the damage was done. My own mother had been telling people I was homeless, sleeping in parking lots, living in my vehicle, barely surviving. I drove home that afternoon in complete silence, not because I was angry, because I was stunned. Who does that? Who humiliates their own daughter just to make themselves feel superior? Later that week, I called my mother. I gave her every opportunity to tell the truth. Instead, she doubled down. "Oh, sweetheart." That fake, sympathetic voice. I hated that voice. "I was only asking people to pray for you." By telling them I'm homeless? Long pause. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. "Well, you're not exactly thriving." That sentence changed everything. Because in that moment, I realized something. My parents didn't want me to recover. They wanted a story, and that story only worked if I stayed broken. So I stopped explaining myself, stopped defending myself, stopped correcting people. Instead, I focused on work. What nobody knew was that my divorce had forced me to become smarter, stronger, more disciplined. I wasn't spending money trying to impress anybody anymore. No vacations, no fancy restaurants, no designer handbags, nothing. Every extra dollar went into investments, real estate, land, rental properties, anything with long-term value. For nearly 3 years, I worked like crazy. Weekends, holidays, late nights, early mornings. While everybody else was talking about me, I was building something. Then one afternoon, I stumbled onto an opportunity, a distressed property portfolio, several homes being sold far below market value. Most investors ignored it. Too complicated, too much paperwork, too much risk. I looked deeper, and the more I looked, the more I realized somebody made a huge mistake. 3 months later, I signed the paperwork. Nobody celebrated. Nobody congratulated me. Nobody even knew, because I never told anyone. Not my parents, not Ryan, not relatives, nobody. And that's where the story gets interesting, because hidden inside that portfolio was one particular property, a property located in the exact same county where my parents lived. I didn't buy it because of them. I bought it because it made financial sense. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The property appreciated fast, faster than anyone expected. Within 2 years, it had nearly tripled in value. And because it was held through my LLC, nobody connected it to me. Meanwhile, the homeless rumors continued. Family reunions became unbearable. People looked at me with pity. Some looked at me with judgment. Others treated me like I was one missed paycheck away from disaster. Then came Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving that changed everything. My parents hosted dinner, same house, same relatives, same fake smiles. The moment I walked through the door, I knew something was wrong. Everyone went quiet. Not normal quiet, awkward quiet. Then Ryan smirked. "Look who made it." A few people laughed. I ignored it, took my seat, started eating. 20 minutes later, Ryan decided to perform for the room. "So, Sarah," he leaned back, grinning, "still living out of your car?" The entire table laughed. My mother laughed too. Even now, years later, that sound still bothers me. Not because it hurt, because it told me exactly who she was. I looked around the table. Nobody defended me. Nobody. Then Ryan added, "You know, Mom says she saw your SUV parked overnight at Walmart." More laughter. The truth, I hadn't even been to Walmart, but facts didn't matter anymore. The story was more entertaining. Finally, I stood up, placed my napkin on the table, picked up my purse, and started walking toward the door. My mother rolled her eyes. "Sarah, don't be dramatic." I turned around, looked directly at her, then looked at Ryan. And for the first time all night, I smiled. Not an angry smile, not a sad smile, a confident smile. The kind you give people when they have absolutely no idea what's coming. Then I said 7 words nobody in that room would ever forget. "You should really check county records sometime." Ryan laughed, Mom laughed, everyone laughed, and I walked out. 3 days later, my parents received a phone call that would send both of them rushing to the county clerk's office, a phone call that would force them to look up property ownership records, a phone call that would make them realize the daughter they called homeless owned something they desperately wanted. And when they finally saw my name, everything changed.
3 days after Thanksgiving, my parents learned the truth. And it happened because of pure luck, or maybe karma. Depends on how you look at it. That Monday morning, my mother got a call from one of her friends at church, a woman named Denise. Denise's husband worked in commercial construction. They'd been discussing a large development project coming to the county, one that involved several recently acquired properties. During the conversation, my name came up. At first, Denise thought it had to be another Sarah Mitchell, because, according to my mother, I was practically homeless. But then Denise mentioned the exact property, the acreage, the commercial lots, the residential holdings attached to the project, and most importantly, the ownership records. My first response? Laughter. That's impossible. Then Denise said something that changed everything. Linda, the county records are public. Silence. That afternoon, my parents drove to the county clerk's office, and that's where their fantasy started collapsing. Because when they searched the records, they found my name, not once, not twice, over and over again. Properties, land, commercial buildings, rental units, investment holdings, all connected through my company. The same daughter they'd spent years calling a failure, the same daughter they'd told everyone was living in her car, the same daughter they'd mocked during Thanksgiving dinner. And suddenly, their expressions changed. Because the numbers didn't lie. My mother later admitted she thought there had been some mistake, some paperwork error, some technical issue, anything, because the truth was too uncomfortable. The truth meant they had been wrong, and my parents hated being wrong, especially when everyone else could see it. That evening, my phone started ringing. Mom, Dad, Mom again, Dad again, Ryan, my aunt, my cousin, even relatives I hadn't heard from in years. I ignored every single call, because for the first time, I wasn't interested in explaining myself. For years, I'd defended my choices, explained my decisions, justified my life. And where had it gotten me? Nowhere. So I let the phones ring. By Wednesday, things got even crazier, because people in town had started talking, the same town that thought I was homeless, the same town my parents had spent years feeding stories to. Only now, those stories were being replaced, fast, and people started asking questions my parents couldn't answer. Questions like, if Sarah's homeless, why does she own all that property? If she's struggling, how did she buy those buildings? If she's broke, why is her company involved in a major development project? Suddenly, the lies stopped working. And for the first time, my parents were the ones being judged. Then Thursday evening, someone knocked on my door. I already knew who it was. My mother, my father, and Ryan, standing on my porch. I opened the door. Nobody smiled. Nobody joked. Nobody laughed. Funny how success changes people's tone. Mom looked nervous. Dad looked embarrassed. Ryan looked angry. And honestly, that combination told me everything. Mom spoke first. Can we come in? I considered saying no, really considered it, but eventually I stepped aside. They entered quietly. Nobody knew where to sit. The tension was thick as a knife to cut. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Sarah, his voice cracked, and suddenly he looked older, much older. We owe you an apology. I didn't respond, because I wanted to hear the whole thing, not the shortened version, not the convenient version, the truth, for once. Dad continued, we shouldn't have treated you the way we did. Mom started crying, actual tears, not the dramatic kind, the guilty kind. Then she whispered, we were wrong. Those 3 words shocked me more than anything, because my mother never admitted fault, ever. Yet here she was, crying in my living room, finally realizing what she'd done. Then Ryan spoke,
and immediately ruined the moment. "So, how much are you worth?" I stared at him. Seriously? That was his first question? Not, "How are you?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Can we fix this?" Money. Always money. And in that moment, I finally understood something. Ryan wasn't sorry. He was jealous, terrified, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't the golden child anymore, and he knew it. I smiled, and then said something that made him furious. "Enough." His face turned red. "Enough what?" "Enough that it doesn't matter." Silence. Because he wanted a number, he wanted comparison, he wanted proof, and I wasn't giving him any. That drove him crazy. 2 weeks later, the development project became public. Local news covered it. Construction companies got involved. Investors came on board. And suddenly, my company wasn't a secret anymore. Neither was my role. For years, people had seen me as the struggling, divorced woman. Now they saw the truth. The woman who rebuilt everything from scratch. Without help, without handouts, without family support. And trust me, that part mattered. Because nobody handed me anything. Every property, every investment, every late night, every sacrifice. I earned it, one decision at a time. Meanwhile, my family was facing something they never expected: consequences. Neighbors stopped believing their stories. Church friends stopped sympathizing. Relatives started questioning everything. And suddenly, being the victim wasn't so easy anymore. A month later, Dad called me. Just Dad. No Mom, no Ryan, no agenda, just Dad. We met at a diner, the same diner he'd taken me for pancakes when I was 8 years old. For a while, we just sat there. Then he looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "I was proud of you." I blinked. "What?" He nodded. "Yes, I just didn't know how to say it." And man, that hit hard. Because for years I'd wanted his approval. Not his money, not his praise, just acknowledgement. Just one moment where he saw me, really saw me. And there it was, 20 years late, but there. We talked for nearly 3 hours about everything: the divorce, the rumors, the favoritism, the mistakes, and for the first time, it felt honest. Not perfect, but honest. Mom eventually apologized too, several times. Ryan never did. Some people don't change, and that's okay, because forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. Sometimes forgiveness just means letting go of the anger. Nothing more. Today, 3 years later, life looks very different. The development project succeeded. The properties grew in value. My company expanded. And the little apartment where I started over, I still own it, even though I don't need it anymore. Because every time I see it, I remember something important. I remember who I became there. The woman everyone underestimated. The woman people pitied. The woman they called homeless. The woman who quietly rebuilt her life while everyone else was busy talking. And honestly, that's worth more than any property record, more than any investment, more than any paycheck. Because success isn't proving people wrong. It's building a life so meaningful their opinions stop mattering. And the day my parents saw my name on those records, they finally learned the lesson I'd been living for years. Never underestimate the person who's rebuilding in silence, because one day they'll show you exactly what they were building.